All right, good afternoon, everyone. My name's Maureen Conway. I'm the Executive Director of the Economic Opportunities Program here at the Aspen Institute, and I'm very delighted to welcome you to the third in our roundtable series on reinventing low-wage work. Today we'll be talking about the retail sector. By way of introduction, we started this series because for the past decade or so in the Economic Opportunities Program, our work has really been focused on helping low-income people get skills to get to better jobs, usually in sectors like allied health and skilled trades jobs in construction and manufacturing and information technology and sectors like that. But as we were talking with folks who are in employment training sectors, particularly as the recession hit and people were struggling to find any job, sectors like restaurant work, low-wage healthcare like home healthcare, and certainly retail were important places where people were finding jobs. But often these sectors were not places that people were really thinking about very much in terms of what's the quality of those jobs and what's possible for these jobs. But many people work in these jobs, and and for retail trade in particular, we encounter retail all the time. And it was funny because I was getting ready to come to work this morning, and my daughter looks at me like, "Why do you admittedly look much nicer than usual today?" and and I said, "Well, we're having this, roundtable event on retail trade." And she kind of looks at me, and I said, "Shopping." And she's like, "Oh, shopping, okay." Because, shopping is really a part of our life. And whether it's at the mall, whether it's at the gas station, whether it's at the bookstore or the drugstore, or whether it's online, our interactions in that way really do affect the quality of our life. And strong retail stores are really important in our communities. So having strong businesses and having successful workers is really an important part of our lives in these sectors. And so I think it's really important for us to take a look at that and to think about that and think about what is possible. So in this series and today, we ask, how can we have both strong companies and successful workers? We come to this, we don't really have an answer at the Economic Opportunities Program, and that's why we invited all of you and our panelists today to have a conversation around this issue. So just I'd like to say, when we try to think about a panel for these conversations, we try to think about, okay, we would really like somebody who's got a good employer perspective. We'd really like somebody who's done a lot of work with workers, and we'd like somebody who's sort of done some research on this sector and is sort of a smart commentator. And I just want to say that we've succeeded spectacularly with this panel. So I would like to introduce our panelists. To my immediate left, on your right, I think, we have Kim Owen, who is the recently retired VP of Human Resources for QuikTrip, which is a very interesting company that sadly we don't have around here, but maybe that's in the future. Next to her, we have Zeynep, Associate Professor from MIT Sloan School of Management. And then following her, we have Carrie Gleason, Executive Director of the Retail Action Project in New York. And I'm not reading their bios, but they all have impressive bios, which you have with you that you can take a look at. And to top it off, we have an excellent moderator with us today with tremendous experience reporting on employment issues, Stephen Greenhouse, labor and workplace reporter for the New York Times. So with that, I am delighted to turn it over to Stephen to lead our discussion. Thank you.
Okay. I'm going to come speak here for a minute. Okay. Thanks.
I give moderators prerogatives. They really
Okay. Thank you, Maureen, for helping set this up. Thanks to the Aspen Institute and to the Charles Stewart Mott Foundation and the Ford Foundation for underwriting these panels about the important issue of what's happening to the nation's low-wage workers. Retail workers is the subject today, and they're a very important subject. In the 1950s, 1960s, 1970s, all the discussions used to be about manufacturing workers. We were an industrial nation. Today, there are more retail workers than there are actually factory workers. There are 15 million retail workers, only about 12 million factory workers. And retail is very hip. All these young people want to go work in it. There are all these great stores, Abercrombie and Fitch, Victoria's Secret, Express, and a lot of people are dying to work in these places, but then when you look under the rock, you see that there are some serious problems at many retailers. There are also some terrific retailers, and Kim, is from a convenience store chain, QuikTrip, that is really a model in many ways. So average pay for the nation's retail workers, median pay is just $10.10 an hour. A quarter of retail workers make under $8.75 an hour. So at $10.10 an hour comes out to about $20,000 a year, but most retail workers, I think, don't even work full time. So a lot of them just make $10,000, $15,000 a year. Now, of course, retail is very, very competitive, and employers will say, we have to hold down labor costs, we have to squeeze our workers a bit. But sometimes I think the whole retail field becomes somewhat of a jungle. And we're looking today at how to improve the lives of retail workers while assuring that the nation's retailers remain successful. One thing I've seen in writing about many retailers is that they unfortunately often treat their workers, not all of them, but many of them treat their workers like disposable parts that, here today, gone tomorrow. And I've interviewed workers who say, some weeks my employer doesn't even give me any hours on the schedule. I interviewed another worker in New York that Carrie helped set up, and Carrie's from Retail Action Project that does a model job in advocating for low-wage workers. One young woman told me that one week she was assigned 4 hours, only 4 hours. She went into her store that day, and they said, things are slow, we don't even need you today, go home. Another big practice that many workers are increasingly complaining about is so-called call-ins. Some workers tell me that they're assigned 2 work days a week and maybe 3 call-in days. So they're supposed to kind of leave nothing on their schedule those days and call in the morning to see if they are needed. I've interviewed some Walmart workers who said managers are so inflexible in scheduling them that they had to drop out of their community colleges because there were too many conflicts between their work and their schooling. Another big problem, which I write about at length in my book, The Big Squeeze, is wage theft, which is unfortunately quite a big phenomenon at many retailers. And in my book, I detail about how this happened at Walmart and Toys R Us and other well-known chains. And I interviewed this one worker, an Air Force veteran, who worked at 3 different chains in a row, and each one basically stole hours. Anytime he worked more than 40 hours, they reduced it to less than 40 hours. They cheated on him. Toys R Us, Rentway, Family Dollar, they all often, to use the phrase, stole people's wages. I had written about an immigrant worker in Brooklyn who worked 60 hours a week and was just paid $210 a week, basically about $3.50 an hour. She said she wanted to look for another job, but she worked so hard she never had time to look for another job. Another big issue we see is that many retail workers don't get much training. There are very good companies like Costco and Container Store that, I know Container Store trains its workers over 260 hours in their first year. And that means they're really investing in their workers. They want you to stay. If they're going to invest that much time in you, they want you to be with them for years and years. And I interviewed a worker at Express who said he had 4 hours of training and then was on the floor and was even running the cash register after just 4 hours of training. And he said the place was just a turnstile, people coming in and leaving, and that the company did very, very little, he said, to really invest in workers. Sometimes you hear about I've spoken to Walmart managers who say that they were basically told to push out the older workers, push out the workers who are making $13, $14 an hour, so you could hire people to replace them for $8, $9 an hour. So I just want to emphasize there are companies that often don't do the right thing, but there are other companies that very much do the right thing, that really pay their workers quite well. I know Costco, after 4.5 years, pays its workers generally at least $20 an hour, at least $40,000, $44,000 a year, which is basically about twice as much as Walmart. QuikTrip, Kim will tell you about some of the terrific things they do. Zeynep has done a lot of great research on high road retailers and how others should copy them. So just to conclude now, retailing is a vast world. Millions of people in our shopping crazed world go to work in retailing. Some have very good experiences. Some, unfortunately, get chewed up in the process. And you know, I'm writing about this woman now who's a retail worker in California. She says she has 2 broken, rotten teeth, and she can't even afford to have root canal work because she doesn't earn enough money and she doesn't have dental insurance. Anyway, so Carrie, why don't you begin by talking about some of the challenges faced by retail workers?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for that wonderful introduction. I think it was really great to frame. Steve's been doing really great research on the retail industry, and so we'll see the article soon, we hope.
Hint, hint.
So I'd like to first begin by thinking about retail overall. It's really viewed as the litmus test for the health of our economy, and I think this last 2011 holiday sales really shows the role that retail plays in our economy and how it really reflects what's happening to working people across the nation. So it was interesting. High-end luxury retails did extraordinarily well. Saks Fifth Avenue had historically high gross margin rates. And this is their quote. They were up 48% in net income. And luxury retail is growing across the country. And these are good middle-class retail jobs. They are the hope, and we need to figure out as workforce developers, how do we help more people access these opportunities in the retail industry. They're good jobs with commission, with benefits, and with stability. Yet while Saks was thriving, what we also saw was that the largest employer of low-wage workers in this country, which employs 1.3 million workers across the nation, Walmart really struggled. They had to discount their already discounted goods and saw flat income rates. They were at about 3%. And it was interesting, Walmart CFO said, well, too many people were caught in that paycheck cycle, meaning too many people were struggling and choosing between basic essentials and holiday shopping. And that hurt Walmart. And it's interesting, Walmart, as the largest employer of low-wage workers in this country, it begs the question, what role can retail play in both boosting our overall economic growth? And what role can giving workers a raise, elevating the minimum wage, can that play? In terms of, I think what we're seeing is that luxury retail is growing, middle-class jobs are shrinking, and more people are struggling day to day. And that's happening across the country, but it's really happening to retail workers. 1 in 10 private sector workers work in retail. It's very big, and they're really struggling on low wages, but also chronic underemployment with few benefits. We're really paying the buck for the retail industry when it comes to health insurance and other basic necessities that people need to get by. Full-time work has really become a promotion at retailers like Uniqlo and Banana Republic. And so the fight for the 40-hour work week has really returned. Retail workers are now trying to increase their hourly profit, not to get a commission or a bonus. They're trying to increase their hourly profit just to get enough hours. And so when we think about advancement in the retail industry, the fact that involuntary part-time work has tripled since 2006 is really the picture that frames it. And whether or not a worker is part-time or full-time structures everything about their job and whether or not they're going to stay at that job. And I know for workforce developers, we need people to stay in jobs. And whether or not they're going to grow and be able to reach an income that's really going to help them support their families. In terms of what we're doing at the Retail Action Project, we're an organization of retail workers. We're based in New York City. We emerged out of a community labor partnership that was fighting wage theft in New York City, similar to the stories that Steve had shared. We were finding workers, really the bottom had fallen out. And what we've been able to do through taking legal action to fight wage theft is really, and also partnering with labor unions like the Retail Wholesale Department Store Union and the United Food and Commercials Workers Union, turn law-violating retailers who had no regard for minimum wage or overtime into model employers. And so I think workers can really play a role in creating the jobs that they need. But they need tools and they need support, and that's what the Retail Action Project aims to give them. We also do really significant workforce development work. Our career development coordinator is here today, Eno Oatoye, who is a career retail worker, and I'll talk more about the work that she's doing. We really think we need to be supporting retail workers' path towards career security and advancement. Retail workers do move from job to job, but we would hope as they move that they're advancing, they're not staying on the same level. And so I'll be talking more about our workforce programs as we continue.
Thank you. So Zeynep, you've done a lot of research into the nation's retailers and retail employees. How do you see the picture?
So since both of you talked about more about the employee's perspective, let me just take the employer's perspective and see the tell you about the underinvestment in retail jobs and why that happens and what are the consequences of this. So when you look at retail employment, what you find is that retailers underinvest not just in the quality of their labor, so quality in terms of low training, very low wages, etc., low benefits, but also in the quantity of their employees. So it was really striking to me as a person who studies operations management. When I looked at retailers, I saw that they often didn't have enough labor on the selling floor. How many of you have been to a store and you just didn't find enough people to help you? Okay, understaffing, you're even laughing. So at one retailer, I found that if they had more labor, if they had more hours of employees working on the selling floor, they would make more money. Another colleague of mine from Wharton had a very similar finding in his study. So why is it that retailers underinvest both in the quality and quantity of labor? We should be asking this question. And I think there are three main reasons for that. The first one is something that Steve has alluded to, is that retailers view labor as just as a cost to be minimized, not as an asset to be maximized. And when you view labor this way, it has some consequences. So retail is a really competitive industry. Retailers have low profit margins, even the luxury retailers, and many retailers will have single-digit profit margins. What does that mean? They have to control their costs very well. And when you look at labor, labor is definitely the highest, at most retailers, largest controllable cost. So they approach it very carefully. So number one is that. Number two is the performance management systems and the pressure that performance management systems put on the store managers to cut labor spending. So many retail chains, since labor is such a large expense, they evaluate their store managers on payroll as a percentage of sales. So how well they manage that expense. So let's look at the numerator and the denominator, payroll and sales. So when you look at store managers, there's not so much they can do to affect sales. So merchandise mix, the merchandise layout, store layout, the location of the stores, the weather, all these things, and price is determined centrally. So there's only so much they can do to affect sales, but when you look at the numerator, payroll, although they can't often affect wages, what they can affect is the number of hours and the full-time, part-time mix. So when they're under pressure to meet those targets, payroll as a percentage of targets, which are sometimes weekly, sometimes monthly, what they end up doing is when sales shrink, payroll shrinks. And they end up cutting labor hours, and the pressure is so much that sometimes they revert to not reporting the hours that employees often work, which Steve, so brilliantly reported several times. So that's the number two reason, the performance management. And then the number three reason is from a business point of view, when you look at labor, when you cut labor, you immediately see an increase in your bottom line. It's very direct and it's very quantifiable. But the cost of cutting labor are indirect, they're long-term, and they're not very quantifiable. So when managers try to trade off, direct costs versus indirect benefits, the direct cost always wins. And unfortunately, many retail managers and investors who invest in retail have a poor understanding of the long-term benefits of investing in labor. So those are the reasons why retailers end up under-investing in both the quality and quantity of employees. And then what happens? Let me ask you a question. How many of you have had a bad customer service experience? Right? So when you don't invest in your labor.
5 hours.
So what happens is even at low-cost retailers, right? You don't expect personalized service, but you expect merchandise to be in stock where it's supposed to be. You expect the tags, the prices to be accurate. You expect the checkouts to be shorter. These operational tasks don't get done when retailers don't invest in their labor. And when that happens, of course, sales and profits decrease. When sales decrease, payroll dollars, payroll budgets decrease along with that. And then you can't invest in your labor again. So that's the vicious cycle. And unfortunately, the sorry state of retailing from a business point of view: bad jobs, bad customer service, lower profits.
So let's hear a less depressing story.
Yes.
Thank you. So Kim, QuikTrip has often been rated one of the top places to work in the country, yet it's a very successful, highly profitable company. Can you give us an overview of QuikTrip and talk a little about its workforce and workforce philosophy?
Sure, absolutely, and thank you. It is fun to be able to talk about QuikTrip, and we are a convenience store gasoline marketer. We're in about 13 states. We sell about 1.5% of all the gasoline sold in the United States out of 610, 615 stores. We are growing and building we'll have about 50 new stores this year, so we're adding quite a few jobs in the Carolinas market. And we have currently about 13,000 employees, so we're fairly large. Our employees, most of them have some college. They come to work for us a lot of times as a part-timer and move into full-time. We have, for our shifts, we have a full-time person on duty at all times, and we call them an assistant manager. So we have an assistant manager, and then they're filled depending on the number of sales that we had and transactions. Actually, we break it down to transactions. The week before, will be filled in with part-time help, okay? One of the things that we do is 100% promotion from within, okay? So you start at QuikTrip as a night assistant, and you move up to a second assistant, a first assistant, a store manager, all right? We do not ever hire anyone into a manager training program, okay? So you start with us kind of at the bottom. And we all of us have that story. Vice president levels, sans our petroleum trader and the VP in charge of that, and our CFO. No, I'm sorry. She is still she started out as a mail clerk for us. So even in the corporate office, we promote from within. We believe in giving people opportunity. We have half of our programming staff, and we probably have 130, half of our programming staff started out in the stores. Okay? So we're given opportunity across the board. Real estate managers, 100% of our real estate managers who buy our properties for us came from the stores, or we have a HR secretary who moved up, and she is now a real estate manager in Atlanta. So giving employees that opportunity gives them something. We believe retail can be a career, all right? And even at the store level, we have a lot of 30-year store managers working for us. We've been in business 52 years. When you look at our 20-year and above, it's just amazing how many 20-year store managers we have working at our stores. But we know that's a benefit. I think what some of the retailers feel, it is very short-term thinking. These people are going to leave anyway. So why do I invest this time in them? They're going to leave anyway. Well, we, very much like the Container Store, do a one-on-one training with you for 2 weeks when you come to work for us. And then if a person needs a third week, we invest a third week of that one-on-one training. So you have a natural mentor when you come to work for QuikTrip, and you go to work on that first night shift and you're going, oh my gosh, there's so many people coming through, because we do have a lot of transactions. You've got someone, that you can talk to the next day. So I think that's important to have someone like that. For us, our starting salary is $35,000 to $36,000 a year for the night person coming in to run our convenience store shift. Okay, very high compared to the convenience store industry. I will tell you, the convenience store industry, the margin is 1.5% profit margin to 2%. Okay, but at QuikTrip, we have about $10 billion in sales a year. So we pay very well, And I think having great employees is what generates our sales. So it's very short-term thinking for other retailers who just, okay, they're going to be leaving anyway, I'm not going to invest any time in them, I'm just going to hire someone who can run that register after 4 hours of training. Well, that's not true. We want someone who can give you great customer service. We share in the profit of the store with every store employee, okay? Part-timers, after they've been with us a year, get a store bonus based on the profitability of the store, and it makes up 10% of their salary, okay, the store bonus. So it's not $100, it's not $300. It easily can be $2,000, okay, for a store manager. Then we have a measure for customer service where we look each week at 43 different items. Is your cherry, diet, vanilla, Dr. Pepper in stock? You know, we want to make sure we're measuring, giving the customer what they want. What do you want? You want it clean if you touch it, right? You want it to be there if you're going in for a specific product. You want that product to be working and to be available, and you want to get in and out very quickly, right? So we have a standard where if there's 3 people in line, another worker has to come up and start running a register. The other cool thing that we do, you don't have a register that you have to change your money out. Every employee can work out of all 4 registers, and it's that team that's held accountable for the cash audit. Very different than retail. And people tell us we're crazy, that you're nuts. We have the lowest cash shrinkage in the convenience store industry. Our cash audits are the best, and inventory shrink, okay? So it's a mix of everything, right?
And your people can do numbers in their heads.
And our people can do numbers in their heads.
Who would have known?
Right.
Speaking,
We have great employees.
so, speaking of numbers, you know, one of the main focuses today is how to improve the lives of retail workers, and it's often said the more education, you know, American workers need more education to increase their productivity, increase their earnings potential. So I wanted to ask you, Zeynep, you know, what are the returns of education in retail? If someone gets community college education, does it help them a lot in retail? What education should retail workers get? What jobs does it lead to?
So I haven't really seen scholarly research on the benefits of education in the retail industry. But let me just step back and look at education in the big scheme of things. Because for education, I think first we have to ask, what are retail employees asked to do? Right? So what would they be educating for? And I just, Henry Ford, you know, the father of mass production in the auto industry in the early many decades ago, he has one saying, and which resonated in the mass production system for a long time. And this famous quote is, why, when I only want to hire a pair of hands, do I get the whole person? So Ford, and he was right, because when you looked at the, you know, you talked about manufacturing as being, this country being an industrial country and having manufacturing jobs being very important. Mass production, you looked at the job itself, and it was, you know, narrow jobs, and people would perform the same task over and over, and they really didn't used to use their heads. So who cares about how much education they have? But then what we saw in that industry, so the attitude toward work and workers itself changed tremendously in the manufacturing industry. We learned from companies like Toyota that it's actually great to involve your employees in the design of processes and process improvements. It's great benefits to the company if you enable your workers to have pride and dignity in what they do. Unfortunately, when you look at retail right now, QuikTrip is one of the, it's actually one of the few examples, especially in the low-cost retail. But when you look at retail in general, it resembles more like the mass production system of early 1900s than the Toyota production system that we talk about right now. And that's unfortunate. So most of the tasks are designed, most of the decisions are made at the corporate, and retail employees are asked to execute without making any judgment, without making any decisions, and without being empowered. So if your whole job is just to perform narrow tasks, then education will not help you get anywhere. So I think before we think about education and training, we really have to look at the work itself and redesign the work itself so that it is worth to educate employees and train them.
Carrie, what are you seeing in New York City, where you're based, about the education levels that retail workers have there, and what do you recommend that they do regarding education?
Well, we just did a major survey of New York City retail workers working at major employers. So we surveyed workers working at national retailers. It was the report some of you have, the discounted jobs, how retailers are selling workers short, and it was done by Naoki Fujita, who's here today, and also Professor Stephanie Luce. And what we found was really interesting. 70% of the workers that we surveyed had at least some college. 35% had a college degree. Similarly, 37% had not yet graduated from college. And so what we see in our membership at the Retail Action Project is that workers want an education. They're trying to do it. They're juggling their jobs, as Steve had said, and that the barriers are, it's too hard to work a retail job with the crazy schedules and also get a degree. But what we're also finding is that many of our members are getting have college degrees, have master's degrees, but the companies aren't offering them the opportunities for advancement. Uniqlo is a major retailer that's growing. They hired 1,000 part-time workers, FIT graduates who would be a tremendous asset to the company. But the ability to advance within the company is just the competition is way too tough. And so what they're doing is they're hiring similarly college graduates for management. And so we're seeing fewer opportunities for people to grow from within the companies. And that's what we're trying to do in terms of being able to, what we do at the Retail Action Project is a lot of workforce development work that's really catered to help people access the opportunities that do exist in the industry. And so sometimes it means leaving your growing retailer and moving on to another retailer. We use professional networking. I know people oftentimes think of, well, that's for white-collar workers. Well, in retail, most of our members get their jobs and advance in the industry because they've met somebody else in the industry. When Uniqlo opened up in Soho, it was the H&M manager who was hired there and brought all of their best people. And so we do a lot of training, and our trainers are people who are from the industry, who have careers in the industry, and can model that to the associates. Because I've seen workers who are on a career path, but still have it in their head that it's dead end, that there's not opportunity, and actually walk away from opportunities because they haven't been given the training to navigate the bumps in the road. Retail is a stressful job. It's a regimented, multitasking job with very high levels of customer service that people have really had to develop on their own. And so what we offer is advanced sales skills. We offer customer service training from the most basic levels to advancement, so that members will come to us as they move through the industry, and we're able to help them grow at every step of the way. We've also been able to really cultivate a hiring network with employers, so that managers who are experiencing this turnover because the corporate hasn't yet created the training programs to keep people, and that we're able to offer skilled workers to the retail workforce, and also then able to navigate and manage situations when there's bumps in the road.
So Kim, what is QuikTrip's view on education? Does it want a lot of people with college degrees? Does it, I know it does a lot of training on the job, but does it also subsidize for people to go to school?
We do. And it's very interesting is that we have a lot of people who come to work for us because we offer a tuition reimbursement program. So while they're going to college, one of the other things that we do is you have a set schedule for the year or maybe 3 years, okay? So if you're a night assistant, you know every schedule you're going to work. It's not, you don't know from day to day. You know from year to year until we make a decision to change that schedule. And when we do make that decision, we use a panel of a resource group of employees from every division that we have, and there's typically a resource group will have 6 to 8 people on it. And so from each one of our divisions, that's who we look to if we decide we're going to implement change in something that would affect an employee. But our tuition reimbursement program, we offer 2 different programs. One is we will pay up to $4,000 for a degree or towards an undergraduate degree for anyone who's working after 11 o'clock at night, and it's for any degree, okay? Because we need great night assistants. We think people who have that education can make those decisions, can run a business professionally, and having college is a big benefit for that. And we did that a few years ago because we were struggling getting our quality of night people that we were wanting. So that's why we implemented that. The following year, we implemented same $4,000 if you are going towards a business degree. And that's for anyone. That's for anyone in our corporate office, our warehouses, our commissary, or the stores. And one of the interesting things that we have is for part-timers. They too can participate in the same program, the same tuition reimbursement program, and we make it so that they have to work 20 hours during the year on average through the school months. Summer, because our business is seasonal, our sales go way up, we need a lot more part-time work in the summertime. We want them to work at least 36 hours a week in the summer. That helped us to keep from having to, rehire them back each summer. They stay on. We have some programs where they can go away to a school and come back and be right back in the same program and participate in this tuition reimbursement program. I think it's pretty innovative. It has really helped us with leveling our part-time, that seasonal worker coming back and forth from school. And it just makes sense for us to participate, and that's one of the benefits that we do offer.
So you just talked about education in terms of going to school, but Zeynep, you've written a lot about the importance of cross-training, which is really learning on the job. And a lot of retail workers complain that they're not given enough hours. They're only given 15 or 20 hours. And some employers say, well, if you're trained not just as a cashier, but know how to run the shoe department or the hardware department, we could give you more hours and you could work longer. Can you talk a little about the importance of cross-training?
Yeah, absolutely. So I've studied, let me just backtrack a little bit. I've studied 4 low-cost retailers, including QuikTrip, that offer good jobs and make more money than their competitors and lowest prices at the same time. And what I found when I looked at these retailers was that they didn't just invest in their employees and just let it happen. They made specific operational decisions that allow them to have very productive employees, that allow them to have lower costs, and that allow them to have employees in the center of their success. And cross-training is one of these decisions. So when you look at retail, traffic into the store varies greatly, right? Sometimes you have a lot of customers, sometimes you have a few customers. And a lot of retailers try to match their labor supply with that traffic. So what does that mean when they try to do a close match? That means that the stuff that you, Carrie and Steve talked about, employee schedules change all the time because they have, again, company things, they execute, they have narrow jobs. If they are at the cashier, they just perform that job. If they're stocking, they're just stocking. So they're very specialized. So when and their shifts work with traffic. But when you look at companies like QuikTrip, companies like Mercadona of Spain, Trader Joe's, some of you might know about Trader Joe's or Costco, they cross-train their employees. So they don't change the number of hours all that much, as much as the other retailers, but they change what employees do. So when customers are there, they perform customer service related tasks. So they'll work at the cash registers. The same QuikTrip employee could be working at the cash register, could be cleaning the toilets, could be ordering merchandise. So when the customer is there, you do customer service tasks. When the customer is not there, you do back office, the boring operational tasks. So cross-training really allows you to end up doing something that's good for the employee, good for the customer, and also good for profits.
So we've talked a lot about how things impact workers. Can we talk a little about how things affect the retailers themselves? And Zeynep, do you think it really helps retailers to rely primarily on low-wage workers who aren't trained very much? I know you've studied Walmart, you've studied Costco, you've studied a lot of companies. Is there a trade-off between job quality and making profits?
Depends on who you talk to, right? So if you talk, so the conventional wisdom in this, I used to always say, I had interviewed all of retail workers, and I would give examples of companies like Container Store, Wegmans, who have great employee practices, and people would tell me, executives would tell me, oh, but they charge higher prices. That's why they can afford to invest in their labor. So then I said, okay, let me look at low-cost retailing. And the conventional wisdom in low-cost retailing is that bad jobs are necessary to succeed. If the jobs are not bad, if you invest more in your employees, then your customers will have to pay with higher prices. When you talk to Walmart executives, when they're asked, about how bad their jobs are, their answer, is very carefully worded, but their answer oftentimes goes like this: oh, we need to run a really efficient operation. So controlling costs is really important because customers come to us for the low prices. So it all suggests that if they were to invest more in their labor, then prices would have to increase. And it's not just Walmart. Even people who write about Walmart, even the critics of Walmart say they have a lot of profits they could share with employees, or they suggest that investing in employees would either reduce Walmart's profits or prices for customers. But I found in my research that there is absolutely no trade-off between low prices and good jobs. I've studied 4 successful retailers, including QuikTrip, that offer the lowest prices and offer good jobs and make a lot more money. If you look at QuikTrip in 2010, they made 89% higher profits than the top quartile in their industry. So not just their not just the average, but the top quartile in the industry. So performs greatly. So let me just tell you about another retailer and their practices. This is Mercadona of Spain. They're the largest supermarket chain in Spain. They have over 1,200 stores. They employ more than 60,000 people, and they offer good jobs to these people. And what the good jobs mean? They mean higher wages than their competitors. And good jobs mean lots of other things. One, their employees each new employee receives 4 weeks of training. 5,000 euro is spent on each new employee at Mercadona. And during the first week, they learn about all the tasks. They're cross-trained, so they can do multiple tasks. And then the next 3 weeks are, they're paired with the best person in their area about, if they're going to be in the butcher department or in the vegetables and fruit section, they are matched with the best person in that area and do one-on-one training, much like you do. So apart from training and higher wages, they also have stable schedules. So at Mercadona, again, 62,000 employees, 100% of them are permanent employees. More than 85% of them are full-timers. And full-time here in this country often doesn't mean 40 hours of work, right? Because more than 90% of retailers consider anyone who works more than 30 hours to be a full-timer. So even if you're a full-timer, your pay can vary greatly from week to week. While Mercadona's full-timers are not hourly employees, they're salaried. And they have 4 shifts, and they on average work 6.6 hours a day, and they learn about their shifts 1 month in advance. So offers great benefits to their employees, and then you look at their customer service is much better than their competitors. Their prices are consistently lower than their competitors, and then you say, how about their investors? Do they make less money? Actually, they make more money than their competitors. Their profit margins are higher, their inventory turnover is higher, their shrink is lower. Whatever performance measure you look at, Mercadona performs better. And this is a model that works for employees, it works for customers, and it works for investors all at the same time, just like Trader Joe's, just like QuikTrip, just like Costco. And what I found in my research, which is great for somebody who studies operations, is that these retailers, as I mentioned, don't just invest in their employees and let everything happen. They make specific operational decisions that break the trade-off between low prices and good jobs. So, and these operational decisions, if I had an hour, I would go through each one of them, like cross-training. But each of the operating decisions that they make are very different than what their competitors make, and they work great as a system. So there's hope.
I remember when I interviewed you once, you said, there are 2 ways for retailers to make money.
Yeah.
They could take the high road strategy, pay their employees well, have a lot of employees to ensure good service, so the employees are happy, the customers are happy, a lot of sales per employee, and the company can be profitable that way, a Container Store, Costco. Then you said there are other companies that can make plenty of money by not having enough employees, by not providing very good customer service. Maybe they have low prices, and the customers will grumble, the employees will grumble, but the companies will still make money. So Kim, we keep saying QuikTrip is a model in human resources philosophy. What advice do you give other companies, and what do you tell the companies that say, oh, we're really skeptical of that. We don't think it's worth paying anyone $15, $18 an hour. Is there a good business case for their view?
For their view? Again, I think it's because it's very short-term thinking, and the only cost that they are attributing to turnover is training cost. Whereas you said, customer satisfaction, we have increased sales. We have people who come to our store, they tell us 4 times a day, and they want to see their employee. They want to see Matt.
You hire very attractive cashiers.
No. But they're going to come into our stores, and I think it is because of what we do for our employees. And so there's the business case. Better customer satisfaction, they're spending more money with us. Volume, we are obviously at a 1.5% margin. It's all about volume, right? Mm-hmm. And yes, we could make a lot more money, but we think that would be in a very short term. It wouldn't last us. We'd become just like some of the other retailers who are just, getting by. And what I tell our VP of operations is we make a lot of people wealthy. And so it's not just your higher ups. We have, we're privately held, and we have an ESOP, so our employees actually own part of the company, about 12% of the company. And we have a lot of our store employees who are millionaires in their retirement plan and in their ESOP, all right? It is amazing. We know that buys very loyal employees. We treat them well. They take care of us, okay? And not everyone's millionaire, but some of those 20-year managers absolutely are, all right? And who would think you would say that being a convenience store manager? So I absolutely think there is a case. If someone would listen, you can make more money and provide for more of your employees. And fortunately, our founder, that's what he wanted to do. He didn't want to sell our company when he was offered by a major oil company because it wouldn't be good for the employees. He knew they would change our salary structure, do away with most of our corporate departments, and he turned down probably more money than I could, not because it would not be good for the employees.
So Carrie, can you talk a little bit about what the Retail Action Project is doing in terms of working with employers, retailers, to improve job quality, and what are you doing to kind of make the case to them that they should be following the high road?
Yeah, a lot of what we do is a lot of policy research in terms of what are the best practices, because I think that a lot of the research that Zeynep is doing and other researchers is new, and so it's not, the profitability case on best practices is still being made, and so what we try to do is promote and publicize good research so that employers do have the tools to be able to implement them on the sales floor. We also try to work directly with managers through our hiring network, because a lot of them, in spite of the fact that corporate retailers are increasingly centralizing their corporate operations, the managers are really having to implement this on the front line. And so they make a lot of scheduling decisions, and we can talk to them about how considering workers' requests and managing, considering the work-life balances of their workforce is actually going to make their life easier, because they're not going to see as much turnover, and that will ultimately help them with their labor costs, because they're going to see their profitability up. We're able to kind of implement the virtuous cycle that Zeynep is talking about, working directly with store managers. In terms of, and I still think, in terms of the overall retail industry, it's unfortunate that the case that good jobs are good for retailers isn't just becoming a natural trend. It's really a select few retailers that are really making this a part of their business model. We see other retailers where workers have unionized with the RWDSU and the UFCW, and we're able to negotiate those contracts at the RWDSU and UFCW. We've been able to offer policy solutions that they've been able to then bargain for. At the Macy's Bloomingdale's contract, they were able to really implement the flex time scheduling practices, so that gave the workers the ability to select stable shifts and have 6 months advance notice of their schedule, which is really becoming a rarity in the retail industry. And so through coordination with them, we're able to say, look, this is what we're seeing in terms of the solutions. This is something that might be worth bargaining for. But in terms of the overall level, I mean, what we're also trying to do is only, 5% of the retail workforce is unionized. That's, out of 15 million workers. And so what we're trying to do is really build a stronger, wider membership network of retail workers so that they can begin to create the change and create the jobs that they need to see. It's not just about what we try to do in our workforce development, well, you get the job and then you're in good. Well, unfortunately, people are getting jobs and then they're seeing their benefits taken away or their hours cut. And so what we try to do is really also as advocates and organizers to say, well, like these are some strategies to hold your employer accountable to having the better practices, because so many of them are making these short-term decisions, and it's really putting the cost of doing business on working people. There was an article in Forbes which cited our research that talked about how single moms are getting hit hardest. We found in our research that parents are really the ones that are most vulnerable to these flexible schedules. I've seen one of our members, she had a young single mom, had a great job at Ann Taylor, but because she got too short notice of her shift, she quit her job. And it was a job that we were able to get her through our workforce development. So if we don't deal with what's happening on the sales floor as well and really try to advance those practices, we're gonna continue to see the challenges in terms of helping people obtain employment. In terms of, I think overall though, in terms of how we're working with retailers, it's definitely it's something that we're still paving away. I think in New York City, we're starting to expand our employer network. We're trying to partner more with retailers like Eileen Fisher to really show that there's smaller retailers out there like Eileen Fisher and like QuikTrip, and that more should follow suit.
Thank you. So in an era where some people seem to want to get rid of government altogether, certainly get rid of government regulation,
Okay.
I wanted to ask, start with you, Zeynep. What, if anything, do you think the government, those goddamn regulators, should do or could do to improve things in terms of job quality for retail workers?
Steve, I'm just an operations gal. I'm sure people in this audience will have much better policy recommendations.
Well, I'm sure Carrie will be happy to adjust.
But let me take another perspective. I think we all need to do our share to inspire more and to educate more. Because for too long, again, I'll take the business side of things. For too long, businesses have focused, and business academics as well, focused on very narrowly defined objectives. So in my field, operations management, we have profit maximization as pretty much the sole objective when we teach our students about how to make decisions. Simple decisions like optimizing inventory levels. And my colleagues in other fields have shareholder value maximization as the sole objective of a firm. So when you have these very narrow objectives, firms end up doing things that hurt their workers, hurt their customers, and hurt their bottom line in the long term, and hurt the competitiveness of our country. So I think we really need to revisit what is the purpose of a firm, what is the objective of a firm, and the successful companies that I've worked with specifically and explicitly prioritize employees and customers ahead of investors. So when you look at Costco, customers come first, employees come second, suppliers come third, investors come last. When you look at Mercadona, again, customers come first, employees come second, suppliers come third, society comes fourth, and investors come last. Well, are these companies, socialist enterprises? No, they exist to make money, and they make more money. So why do they put their investors as the last? Because it's just too easy and too tempting to cut on labor spending. So providing these constraints allow them to stick to their values, stick to their businesses, and continue that for the long term. So I think, wouldn't it be great if our political leaders and policy people inspired more business people to lead companies like Costco or Mercadona or QuikTrip? wouldn't it be great if at business schools we teach our students how to get there, how to inspire our students to create those companies and teach them how to get there? We unfortunately don't do enough of that right now. I've taught at both Harvard Business School and at MIT Sloan School of Management, and I teach second-year courses. So our students come for 2 years, and they meet me usually in their last semester before they graduate. And at the end of each semester, we ask our students to do evaluations for classes. And here's a comment that I repeatedly get from students, which actually breaks my heart. They say, this is the only course at HBS or at MIT Sloan where I saw that it was possible to create good jobs and a lot of profits at the same time. And this is the only course where I saw how to make that happen. We need more courses like this. We need to educate our students to do more of this. And I started in a very depressing way. I'll end in as you said, I'll end in a more optimistic way. But I think more people are realizing this. At MIT Sloan in particular, we have great academics who are working on these issues. And even, economists like Michael Porter, who is a very, leading economist in this country, who now states that he urges the companies to put the interest of the society as well as the investors, and he says that the purpose of a company to maximize the shared value, not just shareholders' value. So I'm optimistic, but I think we all need to do our part to inspire and to educate.
And Kim, what do you think the government can do to help QuikTrip, to help improve job quality there?
Well, for us, it is the expansion of regulatory changes that are, make it really harder for us to do business. And I think it is the focus. It just takes that focus away and trying to figure out what are we going to do when we provide, great benefits. If I'm talking about the Affordable Medical Care Act, we're providing great benefits. I know, and Carrie, you stated it, we're paying for everyone who's uninsured already, right? It's got to come from somewhere. And so to have to jump through the hoops and try to figure out what's going on with all this expansion takes away from us. And so that's one of the things that, of course, we would love to see less of. Absolutely. Everybody else needs to be inspired to do what the things that the Costco folks are doing and then try to put into place. If we can just get them past that, oh, it's going to cost too much. We have hundreds of retailers call me just all the time. Can we come and look at your training? Can we come and look at your model? Can we come and look at you? And we're, yes, absolutely. Absolutely. We want to raise the level of the convenience store industry. And every one of them walk away going, oh, we could never afford to do this. So,
Carrie, before we take questions, so a 1-minute answer. So what do you recommend that the government do to help lift low-wage retail workers?
Well, I think elevating the minimum wage is a good start and index to inflation. It's far out of bounds, and it's been too long, and people aren't able to earn enough to spend enough, and so it impacts retail. The other policy solution that we're working hard to advance is getting policies in place that don't incentivize part-time work. All of our social safety net is really for full-time workers, and so part-time workers are excluded from basic benefits like FMLA, unemployment insurance, and even the Affordable Care Act actually encourages retailers to schedule people for 30 hours or less than 30 hours. And so we're really trying to make sure that we're implementing policies that acknowledge the growth of the part-time workforce. But then also we're trying to take on the unpredictable scheduling. So these unpaid call-in shifts are a big issue. Workers are waiting to work at home. They're disciplined if they're not available, but they're not getting paid for it. And so we're really working on developing dynamic policy solutions to really take this on. And this impacts everything about a worker's ability to advance.
And now the moment you've all been waiting for. Now we'll take questions from the audience. Is there a microphone?
There is.
Okay. Okay. Someone back there? Oh, you're the microphone. Okay, this gentleman, sorry.
I don't need a mic.
Okay.
So what's
they're recording it on video, so.
Hello. Ron Hopkins, Aussie Trust. So what is the industry's feeling about a national retail credential?
I don't know.
Well,
Yeah,
I think that there's.
You want to talk about the fog test?
Go ahead, Carrie.
Sure. I mean, I think that you can look to countries like Germany, other parts of the world where there is a national retail credential, and that's where there's a lot of cross-training part-time workers do the full level of retail operations on the sales floor. And so I think that credentialing retail skills is key. And we have credentials. We have actually a local college credentials our customer service class. And that is the training that people are clamoring to come because they have these skills that are not valued in the industry. And so if we can put value on the skills through credentials, I think we'll see a lot more people becoming serious about careers in retail. And we're going to see retailers more serious about their workforce. They're not going to do the fog test as Kim
I was telling a story at lunch of another convenience store retailer, to be unnamed, told me that that's how they hired. And I will tell you, typically,
if you leave fog, if you breathe and leave fog on a mirror, yes.
If you leave fog on a mirror, they hire you. Okay. Now, at QuikTrip, we hire centrally. All right. So we have personnel managers and 4 or 5 people who hire. So we have a set group that's hiring the employee that we know is going to work great at QuikTrip. Most retailers, the manager hires, and so the fog test is appropriate because they're going to have to work that shift if they don't get someone hired to fill it. And so I think there needs to be something more added for, if it's credentialing, on how to hire the right employee and not just to settle for someone who can fill in that shift that day. And I think that may be a great idea. I do want to say for us, we learned, and I guess it was 1996, we did a re-engineering project where we were really just trying to understand how long it took to do everything in the stores. And we learned our part-time clerks serviced 70% of the transactions. So that's who we wanted training for, to get in front of our customers and provide great customer service for them and put them on the customer service bonus. It just makes sense. And I think a lot of retailers may not really fully understand who's waiting on their customer and who is representing their company there.
The gentleman along the window.
I had to smile when I heard about the slim profit margins for Walmart. I think they just opened a new art museum costing hundreds of millions of dollars, with all the art, which leads me to the question about excessive executive compensation. I believe some companies like Whole Foods have a specific formula on what multiple the top executive and the lowest employee has. And I believe in Asia and Europe, the disparity between executives and employees is far, far narrower. Only in America, when people complain about the greed of executives, you see that huge disparity. Would you comment any?
I'll comment on what I know from compensation studies, and you're absolutely right. There are a lot of CEOs who pay themselves a lot, and we talk about how all ships rise with the tide. And so as these increase, and a comp committee is comparing compensation for a CEO, well, they have to increase theirs to match. It's a matching game, and we don't do that necessarily at the entry level. Okay. For us, our pay philosophy for our entry level is that we will pay whatever it takes to get the quality of employee who starts as a night assistant that can turn into a store manager, that can turn into a VP of operations, whatever it takes, because we know we have to bring them in there to get them to where we need them 5 years from now, 10 years from now, 15 years from now.
Yeah, and you're right. I mean, the disparity is in the numbers, in the aggregate numbers, and specific examples. One of my favorite examples is what happened to Home Depot at the end of 1999, when the retailer was about a 50 billion, close to a $50 billion retailer. They realized that they needed more, new methods to get to the next $50 billion, and they hired a GE executive, Bob Nardelli, to lead the change. And the thing is, it's a matching game, so it's supply and demand. So at the time, GE Jack Welch had just retired, so Jeff Immelt became the CEO of GE, and there were 2 other contenders. One of them went to 3M, and the other went to Home Depot. I think Bob Nardelli made somewhere around $50 million during his tenure there. The stock price did not move during his tenure, and it's and the types of decisions that he made during this time were very detrimental to the employees. And for the customers, and at the end for the stock price as well. So it is a problem.
If I may just add, I did a big story about Costco, and I interviewed Jim Senegal, the founder, one of the co-founders, and Costco's a phenomenal success, right? And the average worker probably makes $40,000, maybe a little more there. And I think Senegal, if my memory serves, I think limited his salary to $1.2 million, which sounds like a lot of money, but it's probably 1/10 of what the Walmart CEO makes. So the ratio 1.2 million to 40,000, like 30 to 1, which by American standards almost sounds European or Japanese. But you know, the typical CEO is making 300, 350,000. And I remember asking Senegal, you know, why do you agree to such low pay? He says, you know, I'm very wealthy thanks to all the stock I have, but it sends an important symbol to my employees that, you know, I'm not trying to be greedy. Here.
Thank you. Actually, Alan Wurtzel just left, and he was CEO of Circuit City. I think he ran out of here when you asked that question. but actually, he should have stayed because a lot of us in this room worked on credentials and identifying the national skill standards for the retail industry for a long time. And the beauty of that was that people like Alan sat down at the table with competitors in the name of identifying cross-industry skills.
Can you identify yourself? I'm just curious who
I'm
you are,
sorry,
since you
I'm
sound
Kathy
so knowledgeable.
Vanis, and I worked with National Retail Federation on this for about 15 years. And what we learned, and others, Goodwill and others that are here worked on that too, and that's why we're all back, because we're so happy you're talking about retail again. What we learned two things. One is, if you're going to look at skill sets and credentials, let's look at them in the name of customer service and sales, which are cross-industry skills. So I think one of the points we haven't made here that's very important is retail is a training ground for cross-industry skills that are valuable in a variety of industries. And that's a really good argument to make for an introductory job. And secondly, I think the argument has to be made to the point that you just referenced. We did have companies, including Home Depot, that made it a preferred qualification for hire. And particularly in a time now where we're looking for opportunities for special populations, veterans, disabled, older workers, it's a way to level the playing ground if we do agree on what are the skill sets, what are the opportunities, what are the credentials. So I think we need to look at retail as a training ground as well as a career path opportunity. And just thank you very much for raising this today.
Thank you. Any other questions in back?
I'm Peter Shires from the International Youth Foundation, and we do exactly this kind of work internationally, not in the U.S., and we work with a number of different retailers. I just wanted to emphasize what you were talking about in terms of the evidence base, because this is something we continuously confront, of the need to be able to make the case to companies that we're working with that the investment in training really pays off. It pays off in terms of reduced recruitment costs, increased productivity, and so to the extent that that is there, we're trying to develop it in our programs, but we'd love to know more about what's available. My question is related to the last comment that was made. We also do find, particularly with young employees, that it is a first job for many, and they go on to other jobs, and it's not intended for them to be a career, but it is a good training ground. I just wonder also what evidence there exists on that, particularly for those retailers that aren't making the kind of investments in training, but for whom this does provide almost kind of like an on-the-job training for young employees.
I mean, I'll take the training issue, not the transient employees that move on to other careers. But I think, once again, we have to ask, what are we training them for? We have to look at the work itself and reinvent the work itself before we think about the training of the retail employees. And I think just like QuikTrip, training alone or paying your employees alone will not get you anywhere if you don't change the work itself. That's what I have seen looking at the 4 retailers that are very successful in terms of investing in their employees and making money and providing low prices. It's a system that works together. It's not just one element. You can't just increase the wage of the employee and expect great performance. You can't just invest in your employee, in employee training and expect great performance. So you have to do a bunch of things all at the same time to be able to get there. So I think we need to look at the entire, the whole picture rather than just one component.
And absolutely, it's communicating with your employees. It's really what we do the best at QuikTrip, holding them accountable, setting that expectation, holding them accountable, training them how to do it, training them how to care for their people that are working in the store with them, a very team-oriented. There is very much more to it than just training. It is a lot, the experience, it's listening to their ideas. And I will tell you, we listen to their ideas every year. They have a chance to sit with the CEO, every employee, once a year and say, here's what's wrong, here's what needs to change. And we tell them, okay, we'll find an answer for that, or no, we're not going to do that. And if we're going to find out an answer, here's when we'll do it. And we have to live by what we tell them. And putting your money where your mouth is, doing what you say you're going to do, that is what we need to do as employers, and just make it a better experience, a better opportunity, and not just a stop-off place to learn how to run a cash register.
Thanks. I'm Jill Cashin with the United Food and Commercial Workers International Union. We represent grocery retail workers. I was curious if you could speak a little bit about technology in the workplace. And we have a just ongoing transition to self-checkout, to changing what could be a good job that puts someone on a career path, thinking that human beings can be easily replaced with an iPad or a self-checkout machine. I'd really like some kind of reflection on just like what a bad idea that is.
Yeah,
Do you agree?
Didn't the head of JCPenney just say they're going to get rid of all cash registers and go to all self-checkout? Anyway.
Yeah, so JCPenney also said that they're going to invest in RFID in apparel, which probably makes sense. RFID is one of the technologies that was supposed to make cashiers obsolete. I started studying RFID, I think about 10 years ago. And this is just, let me just take one of the technologies and where it went. I'm sure there will be some technologies that will be implemented and that will replace some of the workers. It's just reality. We have to go with the pace. But let me talk about that one in particular. You know what RFID is? It's the radio frequency identification tags that will supposedly replace barcodes. So supposedly, you'll go to a supermarket, all the items that you buy will be in your shopping cart, and then you'll go through the checkout, and everything will be scanned automatically because they have the RFID tags, and there will be an RFID reader, and you'll go through this amazing experience. So was told to me
and get irradiated. Yeah.
So when I was working about stocking issues at the retail stores, a person who I won't name his name, but he was a big proponent of RFID, and he said, we don't have it yet, but it will happen in 10 years. So then I said, okay, I tried to write a case about RFID. I went to Germany. I worked with Metro Group. It's a large retailer. It's one of the world's largest retailers. And I wrote a case about RFID with them. And again, I meet with their IT head, and he says, this technology will happen, but it will be 10 years from now. And now I'm reading reports about RFID, and it seems like the only thing that's constant about this particular technology is that it will happen in 10 years from now. But there will be, self-checkout has been used in other forms at other retailers, and there are some technologies that might improve the productivity of employees. And I think we have to think about how we're going to have our employees use their heads, not just their hands, and think about what can technology not do and our employees can do, and really focus on that, because we can't prevent some of the things from happening.
Last question. Okay. Did you? Okay. Yes. Maureen, we should stop, right?
So just from a research standpoint, I'm curious to know about the difference in companies that treat employees well, have good profit margins, that promote from within are perhaps still owner controlled versus those that are more corporate. And I ask that only because my sister and husband both are people who started at cashier level, became store managers, and make the complaints that you discussed about corporate people who've never been in a store making these decisions. And I think first just about how Thanksgiving has gotten shorter and shorter.
Yeah. From a research perspective,
Are you talking about owner, when you say owner controlled, are you saying franchises
really
or?
About places where you have these people who've never been at store level. And I think when you said that your owner decided not to sell to an oil company, I wonder if QuikTrip would still be considered sort of a model retailer had you made that sale.
absolutely not. Absolutely not. We would look just like a major oil convenience store. And I will tell you, those people, I was in a meeting, it's been 20 years ago, and I was invited, and the 16 major oil marketers were there in QuikTrip, and it was a benefits meeting, and the one gentleman said, I figured out a way you don't have to offer 401k to your convenience store employees. And me, being very naive, kind of raised my hand and I go, why would you want to do that, right? And it just changed the whole tone of the meeting, but that's exactly where we would be today.
And they cut off your hand.
They did invite me back.